Good day, babies. Today, we will discuss about the following topics. First, we have the communicative competence. We will discuss its definition and the models. Second, we have the basic interpersonal communicative skills or the BICS versus the cognitive academic language proficiency or the CALP. We will discuss its definition and what teachers can do if a student has CALP. Lastly, we have the content based instruction or the CBI, its definition, types, advantages, and disadvantages. We are the Group 3 and your presenters for today. Connolly and Swain of 1980 defined communicative competence as a synthesis of an underlying system of knowledge and skill needed for communication. This view agreed with Himes and others that communicative competence includes various competencies. Knowledge here refers to one's knowledge of the various aspects of language and language use, while skill refers to how one can use the knowledge in actual communication. They introduced their model of communicative competence, which has become the most common for researchers in this field nowadays. The model was not a contrast to Himes' one, but it is rather a further development for it. This development in the field of communicative competence is continuing till today. Connolly and Swain believe in the importance of social linguistic work that Himes had emphasized in his model of communicative competence. Their model focuses on the interaction of grammatical competence and social linguistic competence, and they have maintained that there are rules of language use which would be useless without the rules of grammar. For example, one may have an adequate level of social linguistic competence in Canadian French just from having developed such competence in Canadian English. But without some minimal level of grammatical competence in French, it is unlikely that one could communicate effectively with the monolingual speaker of Canadian French. Here, we can say that their model had highlighted the importance of grammar for effective communication. This physically seems to be in contrast with Himes' phrase that without the rules of language use, the rules of grammar would be useless. Anyway, both models emphasize the interaction of both grammatical competence and social competence in any communicative event. For Connolly and Swain, the study of social linguistic competence is essential to the study of the communicative competence, as is the study of grammatical competence. In the following lines, we will delve into the components of communicative competence in the framework introduced by Connolly and Swain. The first model is the grammatical competence, which will be reported to you by Miss Mary Jane Vispo.
Grammatical competence. This competence includes knowledge of lexical items, rules of morphology, syntax, grammar, and phonology. This knowledge is similar to Himes' linguistic competence and considered as a part of the communicative competence as it represents the underlying system of the language and how to determine and express accurately the literal meaning of the utterance.
The second model is the social linguistic competence, which will be reported to you by Dazzle Jane Maubol.
I am Diesel Jane S. Maubol, and the subtopic that was assigned to me is social linguistic competence. This is one of the 4 components of communicative competence according to Connolly and Swain. As we can see, social linguistic competence is made up from 2 words, which is the word social linguistic and the word competence. As a recap from our first year topic about language and linguistics, the term social linguistic is defined as the study of language and society. Meanwhile, competence, according to Merriam-Webster's, is the quality or state of having sufficient knowledge, judgment, skill, or strength. As an intervention with regards to the given words social linguistic and competence, we already have inculcating ideas about the term social linguistic competence, which is undoubtedly related to the ability, skill, knowledge, or mastery of oneself to the socio-cultural rules of language use and rules of discourse that are played in different languages and social situations. For further information, social linguistic competence can be defined simply as knowing and understanding how to speak given the circumstances or the kind of society or social group you are in, such as status of participants, the purposes of interactions, and the norms or conventions of interactions. These are the following words that we can associate to social linguistic competence as we delve further: community language or dialect, politeness, style, register, accent, and many more.
The third model is the strategic competence, which will be reported to you by Shane Vicente.
Good day, everyone. I'm Shane Angeli Vicente, and today I will discuss the overview of my topic under the communicative competence, which is strategic competence. So, strategic competence is made up of verbal and nonverbal communication strategies that may be called into action to compensate for communication breakdowns. So, it is an aspect of communicative competence wherein one has the ability to overcome and repair communication breakdowns and or problems before, during, or after the process of conveying the informations. So example of this are paraphrasing and to ask a checking questions. So the two basic types of communication strategies we have: reduction strategies and achievement strategies. Strategic competence has three main components. First is the assessment, second is planning, and third is execution. So, in conclusion, strategic competence plays a crucial role in one's ability to think and act strategically.
And the last model of communicative competence is the discourse competence, which will be reported to you by Cheryl May Rasco.
Discourse competence, a component added by Canile in 1983 that represents the ability to combine language structures and language functions into a coherent and cohesive text.
We will now proceed with the basic interpersonal communicative skills, or the BICS, versus the cognitive academic language proficiency, or the CALP, which will be reported to you by Arvian Estomata.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arvian Estomata, and today I'll present to you an overview of BICS and CALP. BICS stands for Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills. It refers to the language necessary for day-to-day living, including conversations with friends, on the phone, and informal interactions. In simpler terms, BICS is a social language. The language used in the social interactions is context-embedded, which means that the conversation is often face-to-face, offers many cues to the listener such as facial expressions, gestures, and concrete objects of reference. It is also cognitively undemanding language, easy to understand, deals with everyday language and occurrences, and uses simple language structure. It takes the learner from 6 months to 2 years to develop BICS. CALP stands for Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. It focuses on proficiency in academic language or language used in the classroom in the various content areas. Academic language is characterized by being context-reduced, meaning it uses fewer nonverbal cues and the language is more abstract. It is also cognitively demanding language which relates to abstract concepts, has specialized vocabulary, and uses more complex language structure. In addition to acquiring the language, learners need to develop skills such as comparing, classifying, synthesizing, evaluating, and inferring when developing academic competence. It takes learners at least 5 years to develop CALP.
Have you ever wondered what teachers can do to help students in their classes who are experiencing difficulties related to CALP? Well, Gloria and Yar will be reporting that to you.
What can teachers do to help students in their classes who are experiencing difficulties related to cognitive academic language proficiency? Number one, develop academic skills in English, not just focusing on conversational skills. Keeping in mind that academic skills require 5 to 7 years or longer to develop to grade norms. It's like assist students in developing strategies which will help them become independent learners, asking questions for clarification, seeking help from peers, good study habits, etc. Highlight and expand on key vocabulary required for development of the topic. Build on prior knowledge by making connections to the students' previous experiences and cultural backgrounds. Number 2. Use strong visuals like graphs, timelines, charts, etc. to reduce the print load and help students understand and remember concepts being presented. Majority of students will learn better with the aid of visuals, simply because visuals holds more appeal than plain text, in which learners respond to visual information faster as to compare to text only. Also, visuals help learners grasp concepts easily by stimulating imagination and affecting their cognitive capabilities. And also, with the help of visuals, learners fight boredom and motivate them to do better. Lastly, as a teacher, ask yourself, how long would it take me to become proficient enough in a new language to be able to handle academic content, like reading, writing, discussing, interpreting, and evaluating?
Next, we have the content-based instruction or the CBI, which will be reported to you by Riza Jean Franco.
Content-based instruction is a learning approach that focuses on language learning through learning about something. CBI involves integrating the learning of language with the learning of content simultaneously. Here, content typically means academic subject matter such as math, science, or social studies. The language is utilized as the medium for teaching subject content. Content-based teaching differs from traditional language classes because language comes second to the content. In other words, the teacher runs a course on current affairs or American history or fiction writing, through which students also learn English. It's important to note that English ends up as subordinate to the material, although the teacher must recognize and be prepared to help students with language skills. There are three types of content-based instruction: the sheltered model, the adjunct model, and the theme-based model. The sheltered model. It is used at university where the goal of teachers is to enable the English as second language or the ESL students to study the same content material as regular English L1 or the English as their first language students. Sheltered CBI is called as such or sheltered because learners are given special assistance to help them understand regular classes. The adjunct model, undertaken by ESL teachers. The aim of adjunct classes is to prepare students for mainstream classes where they will join English L1 learners. And the theme-based model. These classes can be taught by EFL teachers who create content material based on the needs and interests of the students. Other types of teaching may fall within the realm of content-based instruction. English for specific purposes and task-based instruction are both examples of CBI.
Lastly, the advantages and disadvantages of content-based instruction, which will be reported to you by Regine Fernando.
Content-based instruction advantages. First one is language learning becomes more interesting and motivating. It is because students can use the language to fulfill a real purpose, which can make them both more independent and confident. CBI offer a wide educational knowledge to learners in the form of the different topics instructed. Content-based instruction helps students to develop a much wider knowledge of the world, which can feed back into improving and supporting their general needs. Third one is it helps students develop valuable study skills such as note-taking, summarizing, and extracting key information from text. When content-based instruction is applied, students' study skills will be improved as well as their summarizing and analyzing skills. The last one is it develops collaborative skills, especially when using group work, which can have a great social value. So, content based instruction does not just improve or develop students' study skills and make them independent learners. It also encourages them to be collaborative and share their insights or ideas with their peers and gather new learnings as well. Content-based instruction disadvantages. CBI implicit language instruction can confuse learners and may give them the impression that they are not actually learning the language. In order to avoid this kind of impression from learners, teachers must deal with this by including some form of language which focuses on giving follow-up exercises to help draw learners' attention to linguistic features. The second one is overuse of native language can be a problem in some parts of the lesson. So this happens when the lesson is not explicitly focused on language practice. Students will find it much easier and quicker to use their mother tongue. The last one is finding information sources and text that lower levels can understand can be difficult.
That ends our presentation for today. Thank you for listening.